Hi historians, quick message from present Emma here. I just wanted to address where I've been for the past few months. I made a video at the kind of start when everything went down with COVID, and then I've had a very long break, probably about 3 months, something like that. Apologies for my hair, by the way. I'm doing the curly girl method, which brings out the natural curls in your hair, which is working beautifully on the curly front, but not so much on the grease front. Anyway, yeah, so Herstory's back up and running. I took a break from everything, because everything was going fine. We were isolating. I didn't feel so good, so I got tested for COVID, which came back negative, and I've also had my antibody test as well as the antigen test, and they both came back negative, so I'm all fine. It wasn't COVID, thank goodness. But in late May, early June, my grandfather went into hospital with lung problems and turned out to be COVID, and he fought really hard for over a week and unfortunately didn't make it and passed away early June. And we had a month before the funeral of not being able to see each other. It was in the middle of lockdown here in the UK. I couldn't get in the car and go and drive and give my mum a hug. She'd just lost her father, and I couldn't hug my mother, and I couldn't hug my sister, and it was really difficult. So I was on the phone to them most days and just trying to keep our spirits up and process it without being able to grieve together. And since burying my grandfather on the 1st of July, I've just been taking some time, and I've growing. I've got back into tarot again for the first time in 15 years. I actually bought my own deck that I was drawn to, and I've been doing that, and I've been taking this time to learn and grow and grieve and be a better person. And I felt I should do a herstory on the Black Lives Matter movement to show my solidarity, so I will be doing a video on Harriet Tubman. But for now, I feel that you are definitely owed the final part in the 3-part trilogy of the Medici series, Catherine de Medici, and that's what I'm going to go and edit now for you guys. So I hope you enjoy it, and I've still got videos to film on Medici the Magnificent, the 2nd series, or Medici season 3. Complicated, that one. I've written the script, I just need to film it. And I've just watched Hollywood on Netflix, so I've got that one to do, and of course Harriet Tubman as well. So there's a lot coming your way. I just wanted to let you know why there's been an absence. I've been taking this time to learn, grow, develop, grieve, be with my family, and yeah, just take some time. But lots of her stories coming your way, and thank you for the lovely support that I have received while I've been taking a break. Much love, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello and welcome to episode whatever of Herstory. As I said before, I'm not sure when this is actually going to come out, because Herstory went to Florence in November as a present from my mama for my 30th birthday, because although my mum's side of the family are Italian, I'd actually never been to Italy. So my mum bought me and my fiance a trip to Florence, which was amazing. It was a great 30th birthday present. It was just like a coming home type thing. So off the back of that, we have filmed a Florentine trilogy, and this is episode 3, Catherine de Medici. So please do go back and have a look at episode 1, Contessina Bardi, episode 2, Clarice Orsini, and also I've done an episode of A Historian Reacts on the Netflix series Medici, both parts, series 1 and 2, Medici Masters of Florence and Medici the Magnificent as well. And to make sure that you never miss any of those episodes, please do subscribe and hit the little notification bell so you get told when I upload a video. Also, when I hit 1,000 subscribers, it will open a community tab for me where I can put polls up so that you can decide who the next episode of Herstory is going to be about. So, without further ado, Catherine de' Medici, noblewoman, Queen of France, founder of dynasties, political influencer, and total badass. One of the most powerful women of 16th century Europe. Born April 13th, 1519 in Florence, the only child of Lorenzo II de' Medici, Duke of Urbino, and Madeleine de la Tour, Countess of Bologna. Catherine was the product of a marriage alliance between France and Pope Leo X against the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I. Within a month of her birth, both her parents were dead. Catherine was cared for by her paternal grandmother Alfonsina Orsini, wife of Piero de' Medici, the unfortunate, I believe. After Alfonsina's death, Caterina joined her cousins and was raised by her aunt Clarice de' Medici. In 1523, Cardinal Giulio de' Medici was elected Pope Clement VII. If you remember, this is the illegitimate child of Lorenzo the Magnificent's brother Giuliano, who was murdered during the Pazzi conspiracy. Trying to not confuse all the Pieros and the Lorenzos and the Cosimas and the Clarices, and it's very, very confusing, so strap in and bear with me. He's elected Pope Clement VII, and he housed Catherine in the Palazzo Medici Riccardi in Florence, which was their townhouse, where she lived in state. The Florentine people called her Duchessina, or the Little Duchess. In 1527, the Medici were overthrown in Florence by a faction opposed to Pope Clement's representative Cardinal Silvio Passerini, and Catherine was taken hostage and placed in a series of convents. Clement had no choice but to crown Charles Holy Roman Emperor in return for his help in retaking the city of Florence. In October 1529, Charles's troops laid siege on Florence, but as the siege dragged on, voices called for Catherine to be killed and chained naked to the city walls, or simply handed over to the troops to be used for their sexual gratification. She was 10 years old at that point. The city finally surrendered 10 months later on the 12th of August 1530, and Clement summoned Catherine from her convent to join him in Rome, where they greeted with open arms and tears in their eyes. Then he set about the business of finding her a husband. Despite being described by a Venetian envoy as small of stature, thin and without delicate features, but having the protruding eyes peculiar to the Medici family, suitors were lined up for her hand. When Francis I proposed his second son Henry, Duke of Orleans, in early 1533, Clement basically bit his hand off. The wedding took place on the 28th of October 1533 in Marseille. The couple were both only 14 at the time. Henry danced and jousted for Catherine before they left the ball at midnight to consummate their marriage, with King Francis in attendance, making sure the deed was done, obviously. Catherine saw little of Henry during the first year of their marriage, but the ladies at court treated her really well. She was dealt a blow to her standing, however, when Pope Clement died on the 25th of September 1534. The next Pope, Paul III, broke the alliance with France and refused to hand over her enormous dowry. Henry openly took mistresses, and for the first 10 years of their marriage they failed to produce any offspring at all. This wasn't helped by the birth of Henry's illegitimate daughter in 1537 by Mistress Philippa Ducci, who he publicly acknowledged. The year before, Henry's older brother Francis had contracted a fever and died, leaving Henry as heir to the French throne, or the Dauphin, as they were called, piling on the pressure for an heir even more. Divorce was discussed, and Catherine tried everything to conceive, including placing cow dung and ground stag antlers on her source of life and drinking mole's urine. On January the 19th, 1544, she finally gave birth to a son named Francis. And she very quickly conceived again, and on the 2nd of April 1545 she bore daughter Elizabeth. She went on to have a further 8 children. 6 of them survived infancy, including the future Charles IX, Henry III and Francis, Duke of Anjou, securing the future of the Valois dynasty. When King Francis I died on the 31st of March 1547, Catherine became Queen Consort of France and her husband became king. She was crowned at the Basilica of Saint-Denis on the 10th of June 1549. Henry allowed Catherine almost no political influence as queen, although she sometimes acted as regent during his absences from France, but her powers were limited. From the age of 15, Henry had taken Diane of Poitiers as a mistress, and he openly exalted and adored her for the rest of his life. He gave her the chateau of Chenonceau, which Catherine had really wanted, and was the central figure at court, dispensing patronage and accepting favours. An imperial ambassador reported that in the presence of guests, Henry would sit on Diane's lap, play the guitar, talk about politics, and fondle her breasts. Nice. In 1556, Catherine nearly died, giving birth to twin daughters, Joan and Victoria. Surgeons saved her life by breaking Joan's legs, who died in the womb, and Victoria died 7 weeks later. Catherine, after that, would have no more children. Henry's reign saw the rise of the Guise brothers, and when their sister Marie de Guise married James V of Scotland, their daughter, Mary, later Queen of Scots, became engaged at age 5 to Catherine's son, Francis, the heir to the French throne. Mary, Queen of Scots, I'll just call her for ease, so we know who we're talking about, was brought up by Catherine with her own children at court, while Marie de Guise governed Scotland as regent on her daughter's behalf. On the 3rd or 4th of April 1559, Henry signed the Pact of Cateau Cambrésis with the Holy Roman Emperor of Spain. And the treaty was sealed by the marriage of daughter Elizabeth to Philip II of Spain. The wedding festivities lasted 5 days, and during the jousting, Henry, wearing Diane's colours, was knocked from his horse and a lance shattered his face. He was carried to nearby Chateau de Tournai, where 6 splinters of wood were extracted from his head and eyes, one of which had pierced his brain. Catherine stayed by his side for 10 days while his state fluctuated. Slowly he lost his sight, speech and reason, and on the 10th of July 1559 he died, aged 40. From that day, Catherine took a broken lance as her emblem with the motto, "From this come my tears and pain." Her son Francis II, at the age of 15, became king, and Catherine acted as regent on his behalf and as co-ruler. One of her first acts was to strip Diane of all of her jewels and return Chateau de Chenonceau to the crown. During her son's reign, the Guise family were on the rise, and the Protestant Huguenots were being persecuted by them with great zeal. Catherine adopted a moderate stance, not seeing the need to punish people who worshipped in private, very much like Elizabeth I's stance on Protestantism and Catholicism at the time. She did not take up arms against them. She didn't see the point. In late 1560, Francis became ill with an ear infection / abscess and died on the 5th of December. Catherine was appointed by the Privy Council as governess of France with sweeping powers, and her 9-year-old son, now Charles IX, slept with his mum, cried during his coronation, and needed her by his side constantly. It was Catherine who presided over council, decided on policy, and controlled state business. However, France was split under the control of noble families and was on the brink of civil war, so this task was never going to be straightforward. For example, in January 1562, Catherine issued the Edict of Saint-Germain to build bridges between Protestants and Catholics. On the 1st of March, at the massacre of Saint-Vassy, the Duke of Guise and his men attacked worshipping Huguenots, killing 74 and wounding 104. This lit the fuse that sparked the French Wars of Religion. For the next 30 years, France was in a state of either civil war or armed truce. Louis de Bourbon and the English began a Protestant rampage throughout France, seizing towns. Catherine met them, and when they refused to back down, she sent a royal army to reclaim the lands. She insisted on visiting the battlefields and warned of the danger, laughed, "My courage is as great as yours." On the 19th of March 1563, the Edict of Pacification ended the war, and Catherine rallied both Huguenots and Catholics to retake Le Havre from the English. Le Havre. On the 17th of August 1563, Charles was declared of age at the Parliament of Rouen, but he was never really able to rule alone, and he had very little interest in government. On the 27th of September 1567, at the surprise of Meaux, Huguenot forces attempted to ambush the king, triggering another civil war, which was ended by the Peace of Longjumeau on the 23rd of March of 1568, but this marked a turning point in Catherine's policy towards the Huguenots. She told the Venetian ambassador that all one could expect from Huguenots was deceit. Catherine now looked to further Valois interests with marriage alliances. In 1570, Charles was married to Elizabeth of Austria, daughter of the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian II, and daughter Margaret was married to Henry II of Navarre. On the night of the 23rd/24th of August 1572, the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre broke out. A wave of mob violence by Catholics against Huguenots, some say instigated by Catherine and Charles. The slaughter lasted for almost a week and spread throughout the whole of France, where it continued into the autumn, killing over 2,000 people. 2 years later, Charles died aged 23, and brother Henry, who was king of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth at that point, returned to France to take the crown. Henry was Catherine's favourite son. He comes to the throne as a healthy adult, however, doesn't have much interest in governing either, and depended on Catherine to do the hard graft while he went on lots of pilgrimages. Youngest son Francis died in 1584 of consumption, and Henry had not produced an heir with wife Louise. At the age of 59, Catherine embarked on an 18-month journey around the south of France, earning her new respect from the French people. And on her return to Paris in 1579, she was greeted warmly by Parliament and people. Venetian ambassador said, "She is an indefatigable princess, born to tame and govern a people as unruly as the French. They now recognise her merits, her concern for unity, and are sorry not to have appreciated her sooner." Of course, many Catholics were appalled by her attempts to reconcile with the Huguenots. The Duke of Guise had taken leadership of the Catholic League and signed the Treaty of Joinville with Spain. Henry was forced to give in to the League's demands, so he went into hiding with 45 bodyguards, known as the 45, to pray and fast, and left Catherine to sort out the mess. The Parisians revolted against an absent king, setting up barricades in the streets in May 1588, and refused to take orders from anyone except the Duke of Guise. Henry surrendered to the League's demands, returned to Paris, and signed the Act of Union. On the 23rd of September 1588, Henry asked the Duke of Guise to call on him at Chateau de Blois, where Guise entered Henry's chamber, and the 45 plunged their blades into his body, and he bled to death at the foot of the king's bed. 8 members of the Guise family were rounded up and hacked to death in the palace dungeons. Catherine was completely unaware of this. She was in bed with a lung infection, and when she found out, she called Henry. She called him a wretched man rushing towards ruin. Catherine died on the 5th of January 1589, aged 69, of pleurisy. L'Estoile wrote that those close to her believe her life has been shattered over her displeasure at her son's deed. 8 months later, Jacques Clement stabbed Henry to death, ending the Valois dynasty. He was succeeded by Henry of Navarre, daughter Margaret's husband, of the House of Bourbon. Catherine's remains had been interred at Saint Denis Basilica in Paris, but in 1793 a revolutionary mob tossed her bones into a mass grave with those of other kings and queens. Anyway, so fun facts about Caterina de Medici, or Catherine de Medici. Catherine was a keen patron of the arts and was an avid collector. An inventory drawn up after her death listed works of art including tapestries, hand-drawn maps, sculptures, rich fabrics, ebony furniture inlaid with ivory, sets of china and Limoges pottery. There were also hundreds of portraits, her favourite painters being Jean and Francois Clouet and Antoine Caron. She commissioned dramas, musicals, masks, plays, ballets and dances. She shared the Medici love of architecture, carving emblems of her love and grief into the very stonework of her buildings, such as the Hotel de la Reine and Chateau Chenonceau. Try saying that when you're drunk. Chenonceau. Catherine had a group of 80 female spies known as the Flying Squadron. The most accomplished and notorious member was a woman named Charlotte de Sauve, who was a mistress of that pesky Duke of Guise. Catherine was labelled by many as a witch, not for her actual interest in the occult, but that's kind of what she was noted for, this occultist witch. This was due to her not being able to produce an heir for 10 years. An infertile queen was regarded as unnatural, supernatural even. In actual fact, it's believed that their trouble conceiving was down to Henry's penile deformity, and after a physician sat down with them and showed them different ways to work around this, 8 children followed. She did fan the flames of the rumours a little bit by mixing with characters like Nostradamus and the Ruggieri brothers, who were supposed necromancers, and hanging around with known astrologers. Some believed Catherine to be the creator of the Black Mass, a satanic inversion of the traditional Catholic. What is wrong with me? A satanic inversion of the traditional Catholic Mass. People were often labelled as witches when they didn't behave the way women should. Elizabeth Woodville, Anne Boleyn, just to name a few. And witchcraft was often attributed to foreign women in power who were disliked by their subjects, and many called her the Italian woman as a slur, a nasty name. Kids. So Catherine and Henry had 10 children. 4 sons and 3 daughters survived to adulthood. 3 of her sons became kings of France. 2 of her daughters married kings, and 1 married a duke. Catherine outlived all of her children except Henry III, who died 7 months after her. And Margaret, her daughter, wife of Henry of Navarre, succeeded the throne after Henry III's death. So, yeah, she was only outlived by Henry, who promptly died, and then Margaret. Catherine was highly educated, disciplined, shrewd, artistic, energetic, extroverted, courageous, and happy. She raised her children and supervised their education herself. She was eloquent and clever in her dealings with the scheming Guise brothers. She married her children strategically to solidify alliances. She was temperate and moderate in affairs of religion, in spite of the French wars of religion taking place all around her. She fought hard for tolerance and reconciliation and peace. From her very birth, with her parents dying like a month after she was born, she just yearned for security. She went from orphan to prisoner of war to fertility challenged princess to single mother in charge of an entire dynasty. In 1530, when the anti-Medici forces surrounded her nunnery and the question was being asked whether to just kill her or whore her out to the soldiers, Catherine shaved her head and wore a nun's habit, convinced no bride of Christ should die quietly. As she was led to the custody of the Pope, she refused to discard her holy outfit and clapped back at the menacing mob who were calling for her death. She was 11 years old. For the rest of her life, Catherine wrote to the nuns who had sheltered and schooled her during the uprising and sent them revenue from her own lands for their annual income. It's very sweet. When it came to daughter Margaret, her and Catherine had a very complex relationship, with Catherine tending to actually favour son-in-law Henry of Navarre. Margaret had a tendency to cheat on Henry, and in October 1586, on Catherine's orders, Henry imprisoned his wife and executed her lover, although not right in front of her eyes like Catherine had suggested. After Henry became King of France, he annulled his marriage to Margaret very quickly and replaced her with Catherine's cousin, Marie de Medici. When Catherine found out that one of Margaret's lovers was, wait for it, Henry of Guise, Catherine and Charles allegedly pulled Margaret from her bed, ripped her nightclothes, and tore her hair from her head in punishment. What did this Henry de Guise look like to have all these blooming mistresses, man? These important women prepared to sleep with him. Must have been quite the handsome man, but he was not a very nice man. That's important. I don't know, that's a terrible French accent. Catherine was... Stop that immediately. Catherine was fluent in Greek, Latin, and French. She was a keen mathematician, and she did study astrology and astronomy. Henry of Navarre's mother, Jeanne d'Albret, died in somewhat mysterious circumstances. She was one of the leaders of the Huguenot party, and she was the cousin of King Henry III, Catherine's son. She was married to Antoine de Bourbon. Jeanne became ruler of Navarre when her dad died in 1555 and Antoine ruled as consort. They fought over whether son Henry should be Catholic or Protestant, and Antoine sent Henry to Catherine's court, and Antoine ended up fighting for the Catholic royal side in the wars of religion. He was killed at a siege in Rouen in 1562. As the wedding between Henry and Margaret was drawing near, Jeanne started shouting that her son should openly display his Protestant faith at the wedding. When Jeanne arrived in Paris to buy clothes for the wedding, she was taken ill and died on the 9th of June 1572, aged 43. Huguenot writers accused Catherine of murdering her with poisoned gloves. Catherine had introduced perfumed gloves to France. The very, very, very Catholic ceremony took place on the 18th of August 1572 at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. A room at Château de Blois fanned these rumours of Catherine being a poisoner, where Catherine kept a room full of 237 tiny cabinets, like tiny little wooden drawers and cabinets, that were rumoured to be her private apothecary cabinet containing an extensive collection of poison hidden within the beautiful woodwork facade. The room is actually thought to have housed her objets d'art and confidential papers, though. Italian women were often wrongly stereotyped as being master poisoners. So there we are. I wonder if women were wrongly accused of being poisoners because of Locusta. I wonder if they knew about her back then. Nero's imperial poisoner. Please go and have a look at my episode on Locusta if you haven't seen it, because it's deeply interesting. It's a very early episode. It's like episode 4 or 5 or something. But yeah, she was Nero's imperial poisoner, and she set up a school for poisoners. And then of course you have kind of the Borgias, and yeah, there's kind of a propensity for poison in getting rid of important people in Italy in the time of the Borgias and the Medicis. So you can see where that rumour came from, to be honest. But yeah, just food for thought. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Hopefully you've watched the whole Florentine trilogy of Herstory, and hopefully you loved it. If there's anywhere you would like me to go and visit and do a Herstory on someone, please let me know. I'd be really excited to do that, really open to that idea. Please give this video a like if you've enjoyed it. Yeah, give us a thumbs up and subscribe, and I shall look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Herstory. Thank you very much. See you soon.